The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Woldu. We got a great show for you this week. Lots to talk about. We'll get to the Lloydminster Bobcats in just a few moments too, because we want to talk about their first two games of the year. But we'll go to you. We're going to go to our good friend here, Andrew Brethauer. Our good friend, at least mine, somewhat. Well, we'll see how this goes after the half hour. Well, I'm trying a new thing here where I'm trying to be positive to you.
What do you want?
Bring back the vibes. Well, we'll see. I might need a favor down the road, but nevertheless, Andrew with the Lloyd Source. How are you doing, buddy?
Good, yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Things are going well. Of course, this week has been definitely interesting. I know things have been a little bit interesting for you. Mr. Aaron Rawlake, you're the Junior B and C chairman with Hockey Alberta. How are things with you?
Just ramping up. Hockey season for us is just underway, so it's been a busy few weeks helping teams get organized. But we're looking forward to them hitting their regular seasons and everything calms down for me.
Yeah, this is the rush right now,
exactly.
Just making sure everything gets through. All right, well, we'll start with hockey. I feel that you guys are very familiar with the Lloydminster Bobcats here. So far, 2 games, no wins, but there have been some positive signs throughout the 6 periods that we saw between them and Bonnyville. Were some of the signs, I know, Andrew, you were there for Saturday night's game. What was one of the things that you saw that was a definite improvement from game 1 to game 2, or maybe somewhere in between, something that you saw that you liked?
There was definitely their compete. At least you know that much. That you're going to get compete from younger guys who are all trying to still fight for spots, and whether or not they're going to be first line, fourth line, and anywhere in there. I like the line of Zach Webb and Kobe Walker. They're doing exceptionally well. They're the one line that constantly stood out. And it's hard when you're still trying to get used to 24 different guys and learn all the names and stuff as well as a member of the media. But those two are the guys that constantly, all the time, stepped up and stepped out for who you saw on the ice.
It's nice to see 17 and 18-year-olds actually start playing up to a level like the Junior A compared to what they were doing in midget. What were some of the things that you saw, or some things that you're liking with the Bobcats so far?
Well, you have to like the youth and the enthusiasm. Is this going to be the year? I think everyone would probably agree, absolutely not, but the base is there. I mean, what I really like too is for the first time in a long time, we have more local kids on the Bobcats than Spruce Grove does. That's a great thing that these guys are choosing to stay here and play, especially given the success of our, the AAA Bantam and midget programs over the last couple of years. To see some of those guys make that step locally is huge. And I wasn't at the game, but I mean, from everything I hear, to echo what Andy said, well, with Webb and Walker, I mean, you're hearing nothing but great things, and the compete level of those guys hopefully will help carry those Bobcats through the season. At least keep them quite competitive.
All right, guys, how about this? World Cup of Hockey started up on the weekend as well. And Canada looked pretty good. The United States a little shaky, and Team Europe, for whatever reason, they looked bad to start in the exhibition games. Looked pretty good through first 2 games. What was your biggest surprise? And we'll start with you, Aaron.
Well, I think it's got to be Europe right off the bat. I think, the countries as a whole have a team, have an advantage where a lot of these guys have played together numerous times. And Europe doesn't quite have that, but I think now they've gotten to the flow and they realize that they're underdogs and they have nothing to lose and they play like it. They're fun to watch. You knew they were going to have that high-end skill, but as an Oilers fan too, it's awesome to see Draisaitl absolutely tearing it up. And
it's interesting because none of those guys really are those marquee players. There's not a lot. There's their Kopitars and your Charas, but they're not like, they're not your Crosbys, they're not McDavids, they're not those types of guys that are going to get the headlines all the time. So it's nice seeing a Team Europe, who I said last week that, what do they have to play for? They're playing for Europe, which isn't a country, so it kind of loses that world mystique, I guess you could call it.
But then there's a lot of hype around, like, say, Team North America.
And they
have no real affiliation, right?
No.
I think that's because we're in North America, and those young guys. And is it really that much hype, or are we just slaves to the Toronto sports media that continually talk about Matthews and then McDavid secondary because they've already claimed him as their own, that he's going to be playing for the Leafs in a couple of years? Would we hear as much about it? Because really that's the only 2 guys we hear about. We're not hearing about, Trouba and the rest of the guys on defense and the third and fourth lines as we are about those 2.
Yeah, and you kind of saw they lost to Russia and losing to a team that, it shows that young guys still have something to prove. It's not just, we're going to run the whole table and beat everybody. They actually have to play good hockey against very good teams, and there's still some bigger challenges coming too.
Well, it's 2 very good teams that are in trouble, and that's the United States and the Czech Republic. We'll talk about the former and the United States taking on Canada tonight. What are the odds that the United States stave off any type of elimination and beat the Canadians? It seems tough at this point, but is there a possibility, and could we see it tonight?
You know what? I don't think so. I think Canada just has way too much for them to be able to handle. I mean, that U.S. team, they seem to go a little bit young. There was a few strange decisions, with what's happening. Bufflin's sitting out, things like that. I think Canada's just going to be too much for them. And at the end of the day, the way Carey Price is playing, I can't see it happening.
And I'm still wondering why John Tortorella is coaching the team. I think his style doesn't work anymore, and it hasn't worked for a couple of years. So maybe it's time to. I don't know why they picked him as a coach. So going up against a Canada team who's loaded and stacked, you need something on that team. This is where you would have loved if Phil Kessel had been on that American team, because he could offer what U.S. needs.
How about though, because that's what they had in the previous Olympics, right? And then you look at them going forward now. Team USA was built to beat Canada. That was the whole point, because they're supposed to be big and it's supposed to be physical. Don't they have a chance against the Canadians tonight, playing that same game?
Absolutely, they have a chance. I mean, anytime you're going to put Jonathan Quick in net, you've got a chance. I think, though, for USA Hockey, I look at this team and think this team is built for the future, not for this World Cup. This team is built almost as a precursor, tryout for their next couple of teams. Knock on wood that the NHLers are in the next Olympics.
Okay, well, speaking of which, we'll kind of go forward to that. There's been a lot of talk about, I guess, a stalemate between the National Hockey League and the Olympic Committee, the IOC, in regards to getting these players, the NHLers that is, to the 2018 Olympics. It seems the closer we get to the date, the further we get away from actually getting a deal done. Will we actually see NHLers play in 2018?
I'm going with no. It just seems like this has been a decision that's taken way too long. It's always, every time someone asks Batman about it, it's like, oh, it's coming. It's coming. And it's always a month later and another month, and now it's 6 months. Now it's a year later. I remember him talking last year about making this decision by the end of last year, and it never came. So at this point, I think it's going to come to a time, probably December or so, where they're going to be like, IOC's going to be like, you need to make a decision. We need to know whether or not you're in or not, so that we can move forward with the rest of it. And I honestly don't think they're going to be in there.
I say yes, they will be. I think the third party that's been quiet in all of this for the most part has been the NHLPA, and I really think that and believe that the players want to play in it. They recognize the value individually from a marketing standpoint, and of course the honor of playing for your country, and it seems like they truly enjoy it. Obviously there's some hesitation with it being that far away, but when players like Ovechkin come out very candidly and state that they will be going kind of no matter what, I think the PA will put the pressure on the NHL to make it happen. Maybe
you don't see it much, for example, North American players, but what about players from Europe? Their biggest thing is not so much this World Cup, right? It's all about representing the country at the Olympics and the World Championships. Do they have a sway with the NHLPA?
I would think they'd have to when you've got guys, Andrew mentioned Kopitar, guys like Ovechkin, Chara, that I imagine, being high-profile players, they would have a big say with the PA and how the PA operates. So I would think those European players, the Russians especially, have a big say in what happens.
It's almost like you think maybe the insurance thing has to kind of go for something, because that's what it's all about how much money you have to spend in to get an NHL player there. Is it worth it? It is when it comes to ratings, and that hockey is the biggest thing at the summer game or winter games, but I don't know if the cost is there, and if the NHL is going to want to take that risk anymore with the World Cup now having it, and with the game growing as much as it is. I don't know if they're going to want to take that risk, especially deciding 4 years down that line and looking at Beijing.
It's all about those bills being paid, first and foremost. If the NHL can't make money off it, they got to find some workaround, and I think that's what's pretty much been the stalemate, and I know you guys agree with that too. Speaking of bills being paid, we got to pay some bills ourselves. When we return, we're going to talk some football, and is Darian Durant the guy to stay in Saskatchewan? Well, we'll hear what these guys have to say next.